Okay, so we are here to really talk about, in a quick format, a short format, a Monday mindset moment for parents. Your opportunity to not be our parents, right? Like I had a mom say, I do not want to be my mom. Well, she's like, well, I want to be my mom in just a few ways, but I don't want to turn into my mom when my patience is tested, when I'm feeling tired or stressed, and kind of repeat some of the patterns that I grew up with that weren't actually that helpful for me. Um, how many of you can relate? Let me know. Just put a yes in the chat, a yes in the comments if you can relate to this idea of like, we're not our parents. We don't want to be our parents, and nor should we be, right? Things have been updated in the last several decades around what we understand for what's healthy for children, what's healthy for family systems, and also just awareness and capacity for exploring alternatives to what has been considered the norms of parenting. For example, we're seeing a lot of shifting from sort of the hierarchy into more collaborative, sort of side by side style of parenting. We're having parents become more and more aware of like what developmental expectations are actually aligned with their child's age, and getting savvy about what kids can and can't do at different ages. And so we're making this progress, and there's this whole field of developmental psychology and developmental research, positive psychology, that has really illuminated the wisdom of doing a lot to support our children earlier and establishing that secure bond early as possible. So if you're here, I'm just assuming that that's something you're interested in learning more about, how to do some more positive parenting practices, but also that there might be something that you would like to retire, you'd like to leave behind that maybe you were exposed to as a child. So just for a moment, I want to invite Lucia, who's here, Janess, and our folks on Facebook, our folks listening on YouTube. Put into the comments or the chat something that you would like to leave behind that maybe was modeled to you. Like for me, it would be, withholding praise unless my child achieves the, perfection. That was something that happened. So unless I was perfect and I got all straight A's, or unless I, it was the top in the spelling bee, I didn't really get a whole lot of praise, and I rarely heard the words I'm so proud of you, except for those moments. So this idea that you have to hold back praise until a child reaches like the pinnacle of their achievement, that's something I retired, and I would like to continue to retire and leave behind. I wonder what it is for each of you. So I want you to reflect on something that did not feel empowering, something that did not feel like it was building the relationship between you and one of your parent or caregiver figures that you would like to leave behind. So go ahead and put that in the chat, in the comments, and that's going to really enhance our conversation today. And I always do come back when people comment. It alerts me, and I come and take a look at what people are saying, and I'll respond to you if you're listening to the recording. So we got Lucia here from Scotland, and she's really keen on positive parenting. Great. I'm so glad that you're here. We've got Janess, one of my one of my smart, big-hearted alums here joining us again. We're just catching up on, oh my gosh, her son is going into middle school, and just kind of wrapping our heads around little boy, now pre-adolescent, adolescent. It's quite a transition coming up. So what a great time to really focus on some positive parenting, Janess. Way to dip into the pool today of possibility. So Janess would like to retire yelling and raised voices. We've tried, but it does still happen. Yeah, good one. Lucia would like to build a legacy by helping people to learn better, specifically parenting skills, because her parents didn't help her, or just to learn better in general. In fact, she had to fight to let them study during your formative years. Oh, I see. So just generally like really allowing and encouraging and helping people and maybe kids, right, to learn and have access to great learning. Awesome. That's a really good one to leave behind. Like any stigma around focusing on that kind of development. Yeah, really good. All right. So some other ones that I've heard besides the yelling and raising voices and the kind of limiting their opportunities. I've also heard a lot around using like a reward and punishment system. So like everything's kind of motivated from the outside of like what you get or what you avoid. That's another one that folks like to retire. Another one is, that we don't talk about emotions, like we don't actually deal with our feelings. So if you need to cry, you definitely separate yourself from the family unit to go cry. Or if you're getting angry, you definitely need to put that away or stuff it or just get over it, because there's no space in this system for feelings. Another one that I've seen that's less active, right? Because all of those are pretty actively working against something that might be healthy, is kind of giving up or giving in, like just like to stop trying, and kind of shifting more towards like a hands-off or almost like neglectful or even truly neglectful style of parenting, where you just don't really provide any structure, don't really provide much support, kind of checked out, and not really providing what's needed, so some of the ingredients that really make a healthy childhood. So there's all these different patterns that we want to disrupt. I'm going to kind of just call in that we are change makers. Like we are putting a stake in the ground for something different for ourselves and for our children, a different kind of experience. And so as we think about like what we want to let go of, we also need to think about what do we want to create in its place? And for some of us, this is hard. Like this is the challenge. And it's part of why companies like mine exist, is saying like, well, why don't let's figure out what that is. Janess knows. We talked through a lot about like, well, what do we do with these emotions when they come up that's different from what we grew up with, right? Like when your daughter has big feelings, and how the whole family system is going to respond to that, and how we can support her in self-regulating and learning how to navigate them. Such a key piece of support and also structure that otherwise would, there's just a vacuum if we get rid of the old habits. So three keys for creating like this experience of positive parenting, where we're like affirming the healthy development of our children. That's why I think of positive. We're like affirming that these are lessons that we're learning. There's a role for me to play, and there's a relationship to build, as well as all the things that come up as humans are developing that are just normal. They're kind of par for the course. So let's roll through those three. All right. And as you're listening, I want you to hear and think about, like, I want you to end this mindset moment, Monday mindset moment, with a very clear statement of what you want to create, right? So like, I want to create ABC, right? And then we're going to claim that at the end and really cheer each other on. All right. So key number one is that we need to know what we're prioritizing. This was huge for me when I was a teacher. Okay. So at first, because, your pride's kind of wrapped up in a new role, and you want to feel successful, and you also want everyone around you to have confidence in you, and you're new at something. Well, guess what? In a job, guess what? Same thing with parenting, right? So before I wanted to look effective and kind of save face of like, oh, I got this and I can handle this. And my kid has got it together. Like we're out on a field trip and my kids aren't running all around. So it had a lot to do with like what it looked like on the outside. And then anytime that we stepped out of bounds of it looking like I was in control and the kids were behaving well, it would really shake me to my core. So in some ways, even though the goal was worthy, I was prioritizing sort of the wrong thing. I was prioritizing how it looked on the outside. Well, if you shift your priority, and I would say to, particularly building a rock solid relationship and rapport with each and every child in your world, whether you're a caregiver, on a yard with 12 kids, or if you're a family of 4 and you have your 2 little ones, really prioritizing the relationship. What that helps you do is it helps you drop into a perspective of a more long lasting sort of, like you have the long view in mind, right? And you might do things, really smart things as a result of that. So here's some things that would happen. When I prioritized the relationship, I chose my battles, I connected before I corrected, and I prioritized things like winning their cooperation rather than trying to strong arm them to get them to listen to me. As you notice, those are some of the tools, like Janess knows, those are some of the tools that we work with that we really put into practice, right, in my world, in the Raising Our Resilience programs, like the immersion, because it reflects that you're prioritizing the relationship. What kids get out of that is a secure base, and a secure model of what it's like to have healthy relating, where like power and attention and influence and all those things are shared. And again, less hierarchical, right? Like power over pushing someone over, and more and less like power struggle, more like side by side, let's go forward together. Okay, so prioritize the relationship as much as possible. Even just using that as one of your keys in positive parenting will take you really far. And even with Janess, with the yelling and raising voices, it's like, is it worth it right now to jeopardize the relationship for me to yell? Like, is it that important that we get to this place on time? Is it that important that this rule is respected today? Could we maybe in a calmer moment talk this through and reestablish this rule and come at it from a different angle than this heat of the moment, right, part where that could do some harm to the relationship? So prioritize the relationship, okay? Number one, so know your priorities. And I would say my suggestion in positive parenting, prioritize the relationship. The second key, and if you have a takeaway that you don't want to forget at any time in these mindset moments, just pop it in the chat, pop it in the comments so other people can see like the headlines and I can see like what you're learning. So please go ahead and type in something that stands out about what I just said, even if it's just to take a note of the top idea. Prioritize the relationship. Okay, first one. Second key, tune into the learning, always. Tune into the learning, okay? Because no matter what, children, because they are in this accelerated rate of growth, much more than we adults can really possibly like recreate in ourselves, because the biological drive to learn and grow is so strong in them. Anytime you're in a moment of what feels like discipline, or like you feel like parenting. So when you're parenting, it means you're like involved somehow, right? Like either you're laying down some demand or structure, or you're offering some support or guidance. You're present. Remember that they are a human being that's growing. And try and see, like just try like opening your eyes to see what they could possibly be learning from this moment, and see if you can name it. It's like, oh, my child is learning time management. My child is learning what to do with their anger. My child is learning how to like, manipulate small things with their fingers, right? How to control these little fine movements. Maybe your child is really distracted and you're like, oh, my child is like exercising their curiosity, like really curious and like letting themselves be really in the moment, right? If you can see something about the moment that is a learning opportunity or represents them as a growing human, it really takes things to a different place. It helps you do two things. It helps you let go of a lot of things, but it also helps you to sort of dig in when you need to, and being like, I need to establish this rule or limit, for example, like no hitting, because it's really important that my child has other ways of expressing their when they're displeased or angry. That's a skill they need to learn, like what to do with that feeling, and I'm here for it. So I'm not going to put up with it. I'm also not going to be just squash it so that there's no discussion of like what's going on and what else is possible. I'm going to see this as a learning opportunity. Okay, so that's key number 2. All right, so tune into the learning. Lucia said, yeah, like try to recognize the learning opportunity. And then sometimes, and Lucia's actually touching on this, sometimes when we take the time to see that it's also a learning opportunity for us, of like, oh, like they're noticing that there's all this stuff that's stuck on the floor because they're so sensitive to this like sensation, like, oh, like slowing down and like, oh yeah, that is sticky over here, like, and then realizing there's been this leak or something. Your child found it before you did. Like kids are sensitive to the world in a different way than we are. They also are different people with different perspectives. And because of their limited life experience, they've actually been less sort of conditioned to see things a certain way, and they're more open to the world. So they might actually bring some insight to you with their temperament, with their age, with their there's little spirit in there. So valuing that you can learn from them too is really important, even if it's just the way that they're testing you. Oh, I didn't realize I still get triggered by that. That's been one that I've had a bunch of times later in my career. I was like, that's still a trigger. Got it. Okay. Thanks, kid. Thanks for helping me realize I have some more personal growth on that one. Whether it's like using a bad word or something, it's like, woof. Okay. For me, it was like throwing out things that were recyclable. I could get furious. And it's like really on the scale of problems, not the most important thing, but it was important to me. And I was like, all right, I'm triggered. So it's like, okay, calm down. Let's just do another lesson on recycling. Prioritize the learning opportunity. Good. Okay. And then the third one is really interesting. I think that there are about 12 that I could rotate in for the third one, because we really hit the most important ones. Prioritize the relationship and really recognize the learning opportunity in the moments. To me, the third one is one that, because people run into this problem so much, I think it's worth saying. And I think it has to do with this feeling of you are a positive parent, which is really get to know and get a handle on your emotional landscape and each family member's emotional landscape, and fill your toolboxes with emotional resilience tools. Like, it is such a service to yourself, to anyone that you come into contact with, and especially to your children, to start this process now, or continue the work that you've already been doing in an even more concerted effort. And the reason I say this is because I've seen what happens when people do. So whether it's, getting out of a pattern of threatening rewards and threatening punishments or dangling rewards, and then there's this whole roller coaster your kid's on that, or whether it's like, mom or dad can't handle it when kid cries or whines, because sadness and like that whiny sound is such a trigger for them. They haven't resolved that within themselves, so they overreact to that and shut it down. Whether it's like, your child has a ton of anxiety and it's really hard to get them out the door every day. So there's this like anxiety that's not being addressed yet, and you haven't quite gotten acclimated to whatever it is that's triggering their fear, and you're stuck in this cycle of them being scared and like limiting themselves. Whatever's happening in your emotional landscape that doesn't feel like it's supported and healthy, address it. Don't wait. Please don't wait, because part of why you would say that it's not positive, or it reminds you of something negative from the past, is because those feelings, that like the emotion, maybe like our myths about emotions, or the way we handle our emotions, or the way that we don't handle our emotions, is carrying forward. Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah. Okay. So you want to get to know your emotional landscape and do something about it as soon as possible when you see that there are gaps, or you see that there's certain triggers that are not being dealt with, or there's a certain family tone of like anger or stress or overwhelm, exhaustion, fear and anxiety. Like I joined a family where anxiety was like a big tone of the family, and it was a lot that we needed to work through, but it was so worthwhile. And the work continues in my adult kids. Even my adult daughter came to me and she said, I'm so glad I've been working on this anxiety thing, and I feel like I'm finally on the other side of it at 26. But we started the work early when she was a teenager, because we knew that this was something she needed to resolve, and as a family, we needed to get better about. So do something about it. And Lucy is asking, should we address it by involving the children as well? Yes. And it's impossible not to, because no matter what you're doing, you're also modeling that to your children. And as a matter of fact, I have a webinar next Monday that I really want everyone to know about. It's called The 3 Keys to Navigating Meltdowns, Tantrums, and Power Struggles with Calm and Confidence. Sounds like positive parenting to me, right? Because we want to update our understanding and our approach to these big emotions that tend to set off parents. Okay. Like, we're going to really want to give our kids the opportunity to see how we manage our big emotions when they come up, and to be coached through them by us. If we can give them those two things, a great model and some coaching, we can start to address all of these different pieces that in the emotional landscape that need our attention, like now. They needed it yesterday. So if we put these three things together, we do create a more positive environment, a more empowering environment for ourselves and our children. And we just get to feel better at the end of it because we feel like our kids are learning and growing. We've established a really strong relationship, and we're all like, the tone of the family has less of that fear and anxiety, stress, and anger, and etc. in our daily lives. Yeah, it's totally possible. I've seen families go from a very stressful dynamic into a much more peaceful, easeful dynamic, and more resilient. It's not like you get there and then you're done. Like then a new wave of change comes, and then you have these tools to deal with that and come back home to the ease and the peacefulness and the positivity and the empowerment. And then it's another wave of change or stress will happen. You have a loss, you have a job change, you have to move, you have a new baby, whatever happens. So that changes things again. Your child becomes a teenager and goes to middle school, Janess, and is exposed to all these different things you have to navigate now. But then you have these tools that you come back to, and you have this home base. Yeah. All right. So hopefully that has, kind of charged you up. I would love to hear in the comments in the chat something that you would really love to put into place next in your, in your parenting world, like whether it's 1, 2, or 3, right? So I know Lucia did such a good job here on Zoom laying this out, whether it's to prioritize your relationship, number 1, tune into the learning and really start to see things as a learning opportunity and your child as a growing and developing human. Or number 3, which is, really tend to your emotional landscape and address any ongoing patterns there. So that within yourself and teaching your kids as well. And I've got a great invitation for you to come to a webinar next Monday. If you register, the replay will also be available for the next week. So even if that time and date is not ideal for you, you can still benefit from it by watching the replay for about a week. Okay. Oh, Lucia says, beautiful approach. Thank you, Vanessa. Yes, you're welcome. Yeah, do put in the chat 1, 2, or 3 or something else that you got out of this before you sign off. We'd love to hear that from you. And then Janess, you're here. I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind coming on and just sharing anything that you feel like is still in play from the work that you've done in your parenting. I mean, we spent some time together in mentorship. I'm curious if you have anything to add to the conversation. Can bring you on if you're available, although you might be busy too.
So. Sure.
Yeah. Hey, Janess.
Yeah. So hi. So a lot of our work sort of focused on my daughter, who
it looks like. Oh, 1 second.
There we go. Focused on my daughter, who
it looks like. Oh, 1 second. Okay, I got you now.
There we go. I'm not sure if I'm.
You are. You're able to. We're able to hear you now. Sorry, that was a technical issue on my end.
No problem. We were focused a lot on my daughter when we worked together. She was, I think, around 6.5, maybe 7 at the time. And she's just one of these kids whose behavior is like really pretty rough for people in authority to deal with, like people who are caretakers, whether that's was her preschool teacher, or now that she's in elementary school, or of course, parents or other caregivers, like other family members who step in to babysit. She has a personality that is constantly wanting to challenge authority, which of course everyone says, well, that's going to be great when she's older, but it definitely presents a lot of challenging situations in the present tense when this little kid is like pretty much challenges almost everything that you need to do just to get out of the house or to go to a friend's place, a play date, go to school. There's always a lot of alternatives that she's suggesting what she should be doing. So that work continues as far as just making sure that she understands, what our priorities are. And we try to understand what it is that she needs, because sometimes her needs aren't always as obvious. So we have to look beyond the thing she's asking for in that moment and say, well, what is it that what does she really need to feel like we're all in this together?
Yeah, and I think that was the most significant shift that we worked on in our work together, was like really bringing her into the conversation in a different way, where it wasn't sort of like, because I don't know about you, but a lot of us maybe grew up with a model of like, well, if you're in any way defiant towards your parents, that's disrespectful, and you'd really actually get sort of shut out of that conversation. I thought you did such a good job of kind of like bringing her to the table in a way that worked for you, though, like not just come over here and yell about it, but like once you're calm, come and we can discuss this. We could work this through. I really admire that you did that with her, that work with her, Janess, and kind of shifting things. Yeah. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was part of the reframe is like, yes, she's a little kid, but she also is a person and she's learning and she's trying to figure out how to, manage negotiations with people who are, physically bigger than her and quote unquote in charge, right? But there's a dynamic, as you pointed out, that, one of those things you want to retire from your own families where it's like, yes, the parents are in charge, the kids are sort of the, they're the ones to be bossed around and told what to do. And trying to reframe that into a more harmonious family unit means you do have to kind of say, what is the control and the charge that you can give to this little person so that they can flex a little bit of control in their own life.
I know there are people listening right now who can relate to a child who just really loves to have that level of power and influence, like the powerful, I call them the power kids or the dragons, come in going, I've arrived, and you're like, whoa, okay, we're gonna need to figure out a way for this child to have some power and influence within the parameters of what's acceptable, that matches your expectations and family values. And then I know that also you worked a lot on the emotional mastery piece with her because she does have that fiery temperament. She is strong, and there were a lot of tools and reframes around how to help her navigate those big emotions and how the two of you were going to respond to those big emotions. I wonder if you could speak to that at all, Janess.
Well, a lot of it is, trying to find a calm place for her. Like we talked a lot about where she could have sort of a sanctuary, like a calm down space that wasn't like you're in timeout, but it's like, hey, let's make this space for you that feels like a place to go when you're having a big feeling, and it can help you calm down. And there's like a favorite stuffed animal there and a book that's about like breathing. And, we tried some of the online tools too, because some of the apps and stuff available can help a kid breathe and things like that. And, I can't say that we've, mastered it entirely at all. Like there's still so much of that goes on, but it's, and she's, developmentally, she's shifted a lot from the time where we were working more closely together. She's 9 now and has other influences. And, every kid is on YouTube and watching all these like weird, challenges, like all these parents on YouTube with their kids are always doing challenges. So she's always like, can we be like the families on these YouTube channels that, do all these things? And they're constantly like spending 24 hours in a bouncy house to get a reward. I mean, speaking of rewards and how, messed up that, dynamic kind of is for kids who are watching this. It's like the media they're consuming definitely have an influence too, and how they think their family unit should operate and move around. So we're working a lot on that sort of reality versus expectations from media and YouTube families.
Right, and you're in a totally new developmental plane where she is trying to place your family unit and herself like in the broader society. She's just starting that at 9, so she is like kind of popping her head up and like looking around outside of her immediate community now. And it is a tender time. It is a tender time where she's like, yeah, exactly. So I love how you said, did everybody hear Janess say something really smart of like the difference between reality and her expectations that are being shaped by these YouTube families? I mean, like we're talking about like the opportunity to learn here. That is definitely developmentally spot on for 9. Yeah, and it's going to help guide her as she's going to be continuously exposed to different kinds of influences, social media outlets for the next decade at least of her life, unless she takes a tech break. So yeah, the big skills coming up for her around that. And it's also like there will be some gems she'll pull out though, and she'll bring to you. And your and Dylan's openness to hearing her out is going to go really far, as you've already established. Like, now we have these conversations where we talk things through, so she can try some of these things out that are within reason. The bouncy house for 24 hours does not sound like it, but maybe there's like a 1 hour of something, version that she can play. She can like bring to the table, and it can become a family activity, and you can try it. But it's kind of within the parameters of like what's realistic. So I see you navigating that, Janess. Yeah, and your big heart in all of this. Let's give a little round of applause to Janess. Snap it up for her. Give her some props. Maybe just put a like, I see you, Janess, or anything that she said that stood out to you. If you're listening to this recording, it's always nice to give some props to them, to parents who come on. And I thank you. Thanks for adding your voice to the conversation spontaneously. I know I kind of put you on the spot, so I appreciate it, Janess. Any last thing you wanted to share with parents?
I think parents already know this, and you certainly know this. It's like you're never really done. Like you think that you might have kind of figured out some dynamic with your kid, and then some new thing will happen because they're always moving into different developmental stages and different influences, different schools, different chapters. So yeah, it's a journey.
It really is. And that's part of why it's so important to adopt things like a growth mindset, or some like tried and true things that work across all ages, right? Like it's generally going to be helpful if you connect before you correct, like no matter what age your kid is, for example, or try to win their cooperation, or get on the same side of a problem, or, prioritize their learning and growth, like we talked about today, prioritize the relationship. Yeah. And so we have these like guideposts along the way, but it's such a journey of like what actual issues you're going to be tackling with those principles, right? What actual learning edges you're going to be tackling is going to keep changing. So it's very dynamic. That's why I think it's the most valuable job on the planet, raising children. And yet, like, it's so strange to me. And that's part of why I created the company. It's like and on all the resources that we have, there's like, can you think of a more important job, that, a job as important as parenting, that doesn't have like a long internship and mentorship and onboarding and a cohort of peers to like learn with and everything. So that's why we're here today. And that's why we get to hear from someone like Janess, who, took that little leap into saying like, you know what, I can invest in parenting and like put some time there. Like that makes sense to me. And so I applaud you in your in your vision for your family, and you resourcing yourself, Janess. Really awesome. And thanks for coming back and sharing your insights. Lucia says that was a great example. Thank you, Janess. Enjoy bringing up a beautiful and discerning daughter. And Janess says thank you to both of us. Yeah, you're welcome. Well, it's time for us to wrap. We'll be back next week with an Ask Me Anything. So if you do have any questions, you can pop them into the Facebook group and just say, this is for Ask Me Anything, or just tag me in it if you have a question that you'd like me to address. Otherwise, we'll be answering questions from our newest Facebook members, and making sure to tag folks in that so they can find their answers. And then we'll be rolling that evening next Monday into our webinar, Navigating Meltdowns, Tantrums, and Power Struggles with More Calm and Confidence. I do encourage you to sign up for that. And we'll also send you a free guide of 6 different calm down strategies, and an opportunity to attend a really powerful event that's coming up. So you won't want to miss that as well. Let me see if I can just pull up the guide real quick. Because I really like, I'm a visual person. I like sharing the visuals of things. So it's this one. So I'll be sending you the 6 quick and easy strategies to keep your cool and stay calm, including like different breathing strategies, 6 different kinds of calm down breaths kids love, and 5 other strategies. And then again, I just really encourage you to sign up for this webinar so that we can send you that guide, and also let you know about an opportunity to learn those 6 strategies with us as we head into summer. All right, lots of love to you all. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being a part of what makes Raising Our Resilience great. And we'll see you next Monday for Ask Me Anything and the evening webinar. Lots of love to you all. Bye for now.